She says she missed you, takes your hand like the cold of the past months never happened. Then she whispers, "I'm pregnant." And even though you smile, you already know something's wrong. The dates don't add up. The phone she never lets go of. That look in her eyes, no joy, no worry, just distance. So you start digging, not out of revenge, but instinct. One file, one chat, one sentence. It's your baby, but the message isn't meant for you. What do you do when betrayal isn't impulsive, but calculated? When warmth returns not out of love, but out of fear of being exposed? You can scream, you can leave, or you can wait for the perfect moment, right in the middle of the celebration, when everyone's smiling, when she thinks she's won. Sometimes revenge is silence, and the truth, spoken aloud to everyone she lied to. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watched this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. I'm Thomas, and I used to think betrayal came like thunder, loud, sudden, impossible to miss. But that's not how it works. It creeps in quietly, a silent leak of poison, subtle, invisible, until one day, the whole foundation gives out. Naomi and I had been married for 6 years. The early ones were filled with warmth, not perfect, but real. We had our routines, lazy Sunday breakfasts, movie marathons with black and white classics, private jokes that made no sense to anyone else. But over time, those small joys started to fade, not with a bang, but like paint slowly peeling off a wall. She was promoted at work, bigger role, higher stakes, longer hours. I didn't question it. I was proud of her. "Big day coming up?" I'd ask while she grabbed her bag. "Yeah, really big," she'd answer, barely glancing up from her phone. That became our new normal, short exchanges, distant tones. It felt like she was withdrawing, little by little. The only time her expression changed was when her phone vibrated. Even then, I stayed the course, handled the errands, kept our lives running, and pushed my doubts deep down. Then came the strange silence around the topic of children. We'd been loosely trying for a baby for about a year. Then, without a word, she stopped tracking her cycle, skipped her checkups. When I finally brought it up, asked if having a child was still something she wanted, she just shrugged. "Let's not force it," she muttered. That's when it clicked. Not because she looked sad or unsure. That would have made sense. No, she looked distant, like someone playing a part in a show they'd mentally quit long ago. And just as I was adjusting to the slow unraveling of what we'd built, everything shifted. One evening, she walked in holding my favorite Thai food. "I missed you," she said softly, leaning in for a kiss, tentative but warm, like the months of cold hadn't happened. That night, she curled up beside me as if nothing had ever been broken. I should have asked questions, should have wondered why the sudden change. But when you've been starving emotionally, even a scrap feels like a banquet. What followed was surreal. Naomi seemed reborn, present, engaged, almost glowing. She started laughing again, genuine, carefree laughter. She'd slipped notes into my lunch. "Miss you already?" Or, "Tonight's just us." It felt unreal, like emotional whiplash. The woman I thought I'd lost had returned as though she'd never gone. I didn't know whether to embrace it or brace for impact. Then one night, I came home to low lighting and candlelight dancing across the kitchen. She'd actually made dinner, no shortcuts. I hesitated but asked, "What changed?" She hesitated too, eyes dropping. "I lost sight of us," she said. "Got wrapped up in work, in everything else. But I don't want us to fall apart." It sounded rehearsed, almost too clean, but it was what I'd been aching to hear. So I didn't argue. I just held her hand. That was enough, at least for a while. In the weeks that followed, we found our rhythm again. She did the small things, folded my shirts, poured my coffee, kissed me before I left each morning. It felt like we were starting over. until the night she sat beside me on the couch, something in her eyes trembling. Her hand reached out with a small plastic test. "I took one," she said. "It's positive." I froze. We hadn't been actively trying in months. There'd been no conversations, no plans. Still, I smiled, kissed her forehead, said all the right things. But something inside me recoiled. A whisper started echoing in the back of my mind. "Is the baby yours?" We didn't tell anyone that night. Naomi said she wanted to wait for the first scan. She didn't want to jinx it. I agreed. But deep down, I wasn't waiting because of superstition. I was stalling, because something felt off. The timeline didn't sit right. I replayed the dates in my head over and over. If it really happened when she claimed, it would have been one of those first reconnection nights. But it felt too tidy, too orchestrated. I tried to brush it aside, but things started stacking up. She was never without her phone, even took it into the bathroom, changed the lock screen code, no more casually leaving it charging by the bed. She silenced incoming calls before I could hear anything. No names, no voices. Individually, it was all circumstantial. But together, it gnawed at me. I needed more than instinct. I needed answers. So I reached out to the one person who might have a window into what was going on, her sister, Maris. We met at a quiet cafe on a gray afternoon. I kept it casual, but didn't dance around the question. "Naomi been talking to you lately?" Maris stirred her drink slowly, eyes fixed on the table. "Not really," she said after a pause. "She's kind of been keeping to herself. Says work's intense." "Did she say why?" "Just that it was work," Maris answered. "You know how she gets completely consumed when something big's on her plate." I nodded slowly. "Did she ever mention anyone in particular from work?" Maris hesitated. "Charles, her boss. She used to bring him up all the time. Complaints about meetings, stress, weird little anecdotes." "Used to?" "Yeah," she said, her brow furrowed. "That stopped a few weeks back. It stood out because, well, that's not like her." "Any idea why?" "She always mentioned him when we talked. I thought maybe something happened between them. Maybe a fight. Or maybe he crossed a line." I didn't respond right away. That name, Charles, stuck. I remembered her bringing him up in passing, like background noise. But lately, nothing. Silence. And people don't go silent on someone unless there's a reason, unless they're hiding something. That night, sleep never came. I stayed on the couch, staring at nothing, every word Maris said looping in my head. There was a knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. By the time the sky lightened, I knew what I had to do. I needed the truth. So I started tearing the apartment apart looking for her old tablet. I emptied drawers, pulled out storage bins from under the bed, combed through the clutter until I found it, wedged in the corner of the hallway closet, buried in a box full of tangled chargers and outdated gadgets. She used to use it for simple things, reading, emails, syncing to her cloud. I didn't turn it on. Instead, I got in my car and drove across town to a tech repair place I'd seen 100 times but never entered. The guy behind the counter looked up as I walked in. I held the tablet out. "Can you recover deleted files?" He nodded, took it, and told me to give him an hour. I drifted around the area, bought a coffee I never drank. When I came back, he slid the tablet across the counter, tapped the screen once, and gave me a nod. I paid and left without a word. I didn't go home. I sat in my car, staring at the dashboard, motionless. Then I turned the tablet on. Photos, videos, messages, everything. I scrolled through it like each swipe dragged me further down, and then I saw them. Dozens of messages from Charles, back and forth, timestamps, plans, flirtation that escalated, conversations that weren't meant for me. Then the one that hit like a blow to the chest, a message from her, a month before she told me she was pregnant. "I'm late," he responded. "Are you sure it's not his?" And she wrote back, "It's yours." But we hadn't been close in weeks. My vision blurred. I blinked hard, jaw clenched, trying not to break down right there in the car. Suddenly, everything made sense. The sudden affection, the softness, how she'd wrapped herself around me like she was in love again. But it wasn't love. It was control. A rehearsed performance to keep the story straight if anyone started asking questions. There comes a moment when rage cools into resolve, when your voice quiets and the chaos inside you sharpens into something focused. That's when you choose your next move. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to plead. I'd respond with the same cold precision she thought she had over me, but I'd do it my way. A week after the ultrasound, I brought it up casually over dinner. "We should plan something," I said, cutting my steak. She looked up, curious. "Plan what?" "For the baby. A little celebration. Just close friends and family." Her eyes widened slightly, then softened. "You'd really do that?" "Of course," I said. "Let's keep it simple. Brunch, soft music, modest decorations, just enough to make it feel meaningful." She reached for my hand, smiled. "Thank you," she said quietly. "That means a lot." She looked so at peace, and in that moment I knew. She didn't suspect a thing. In the days that followed, I played the part, helped choose colors and flowers, smiled while she obsessed over cake flavors. But behind the scenes, I was assembling something else entirely. One week before the shower, I met with my lawyer. I handed over the evidence, screenshots, synced files, timestamps. We didn't wait. Divorce papers were drafted right then. No gray areas, adultery, deceit, paternity lies. It was all laid out. The night before the party, I printed out the most damning messages, folded them, sealed them in an envelope. The morning of the event, I was up early, helped set up tables, checked the guest list, greeted people with a practiced smile. Naomi looked radiant, the kind of glow that fools everyone into thinking everything's perfect. She touched my arm, called me babe, played her role flawlessly. Around noon, they brought out the cake. Applause rang out. Naomi stood beside me, one hand on her belly, glowing for the crowd. "Say a few words," someone called. I stepped forward, voice calm, unwavering. "Thanks for coming, everyone. It means a lot to celebrate a moment like this, even if things aren't always what they seem." The room stilled. Silence fell like a curtain. I reached into my jacket, pulled out the envelope. "This is for Naomi," I said. She laughed, a little nervous. "What is it?" I gave her everything. No lies, no filters, just the truth, raw and exposed. She unfolded the pages with a trembling grip, her fingers hesitating the second her eyes scanned the first lines. Her gaze moved quickly at first, then stopped cold. She didn't utter a word. She didn't have to. Her face spoke volumes. She stood frozen, clutching the paper like it might burn through her palms. Her mouth opened slightly, as if a reaction was forming, but nothing came out. A few guests leaned in closer, sensing something. Others traded uneasy glances. The air grew heavy, not just quiet but electric with tension. You could almost hear it hum. "Thomas," she whispered. "Read it," I said. "All of it." But she didn't turn the page. She didn't need to. Her eyes had already landed on the line, her admission to Charles that he was the father. I faced the room, my voice calm. "For those who didn't know, the baby Naomi's carrying isn't mine. It belongs to her boss, the one she claimed was just mentoring her, the same man she's been seeing behind my back for over a year." Shock rippled through the crowd like a silent wave. A few gasps escaped. Chairs scraped quietly across the floor. Someone stifled a breath. Eyes darted anywhere but toward me. "The divorce is already underway," I continued, voice level. I let my eyes pass over the room. Naomi stepped forward, her voice barely more than a whisper, raw and shaking. "Please, not like this. Can we talk?" I stepped back, slowly. "There's nothing left to talk about." I glanced at her parents, silent, stunned, then looked back at her. I wasn't angry. There were no tears, no yelling, just a man watching the curtain fall on a performance, knowing the lead had been caught in her lie. "I hope he's everything you gave up for," I said, "because I'm not staying." And I left. I didn't go home. Instead, I checked into a hotel on the far side of town and turned my phone off. By morning, the aftermath had begun. Missed calls, voicemails, a few friends scrambling to understand what had happened. Maris called several times. I let them all go unanswered. There wasn't anything left to explain. 2 days later, I came back to the house. She was gone. Her clothes, her toiletries, the photos that used to line the hallway, all vanished. No note, no apology. I stood in the kitchen, surrounded by the quiet. It didn't feel like peace. Not yet. Just an absence. The silence that follows a storm, when there's nothing left to break. The divorce was finalized that week. My lawyer forwarded the final documents. She didn't fight it. No objections, no phone calls, just her signature, tidy, emotionless, on the last page. A few days later, I saw Maris. She looked worn out. "She's staying with someone," she said. "She's not in a good place." I let out a long breath. She made her choices. She has to live with them. Maris hesitated. "She asked me to tell you she's sorry." I shook my head. "She's not sorry for doing it. She's sorry I found out." Time moved forward. I got a smaller place across the city, somewhere untouched by the past. I started exercising again, took up hiking on weekends, tried things I used to say I didn't have time for. The quiet stopped feeling empty. It felt still, manageable. Some old friends stayed in touch. When they asked how I was, I told them the truth. I was okay. I meant it. Because healing didn't come from bitterness or revenge. It came from leaving with my pride intact. No rage, no score to settle, just distance. And sometimes, that's what strength looks like. Not burning everything down behind you, but walking away on your own terms. One step at a time, without once turning back. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. The chaos of the party, where everyone laughed too loudly and drank too much, became the backdrop for something that was meant to be just a joke. But one harmless truth or dare, and everything went wrong. He heard her answer, squeezed out between laughter and fake smiles, as if it was just another friendly jab. But what if there was something more hidden in those words? What if the jokes concealed a crack that had been growing silently within their marriage? Sometimes you don't need screams, betrayal, or drama, just a single offhand comment to break everything apart. And when a person finally realizes the truth, only one question remains. How far are they willing to go to become themselves again? Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watch this video from. Now, let's get started. There comes a moment in every man's life when he feels something deep within him give way. For me, that realization struck on a Saturday evening, at a party I hadn't wanted to attend. My wife, Claire, insisted we go. It was Mira's birthday, one of Claire's colleagues. She spent close to an hour getting ready, half of which was dedicated to critiquing my outfit and deliberating over which shirt made me appear less boring. That should have been my first clue. The party itself was chaos. Unfamiliar faces, booming voices, everyone clutching drinks and laughing far too loudly at things that weren't funny. Then Mira, already tipsy and grinning like she had a secret to share, suggested we play Truth or Dare. Juvenile, but we played along. It was all harmless, until Mira, her eyes gleaming with mischief, turned to Claire and asked, "Truth, if you could trade Gavin for anyone else, who would it be?" The crowd chuckled, expecting a punchline. I waited, smiling politely. Claire, flashing a grin too bright to be real, flipped her hair and replied, "Trade? Easy. Elias from spin class. He actually listens." The table roared. Someone spilled a drink. Mira screeched with laughter like it was comedy gold. I laughed too. The hollow kind you use to protect yourself when your dignity's been gutted in front of an audience. Sometimes you laugh because it's the only way to hide the sting. Claire gave me a cheeky wink, like it was all in fun. I bit down on every word I wanted to say and raised my glass instead. A silent toast to the art of swallowing humiliation. From that point on, the night faded into static. Claire kept drinking, kept joking. And right on cue, Elias walked in. Her whole face lit up, a spark I hadn't seen in ages. I stood at the edge of it all, holding a drink I had no intention of finishing, wondering when I'd stopped being the central figure in my own life. The ride home was steeped in silence. No argument, no accusations, just the sound of my grip tightening on the steering wheel until my hands throbbed. She sat beside me, scrolling through her phone, softly humming some tune like the night had been nothing out of the ordinary. That was the moment I felt it for certain. Something between us had shifted, and we couldn't unshift it. The garage door groaned closed behind us. Claire stepped out first, heels dangling from one hand before she reached the door. I followed. Inside, she tossed her purse on the counter and headed straight for the fridge. She grabbed a water bottle like she hadn't just taken a sledgehammer to my pride. Without turning, she said, "You're mad." Leaning against the doorway, I said, "Not mad, just trying to figure out when I turned into the joke." She gave a low, bitter laugh. "It was a game. Don't be so dramatic." I watched her twist off the cap like none of it mattered. "You picked Elias." She waved it off. "It was a joke. Don't overthink it." "You really mean that?" At last she turned. Her eyes narrowed. "Seriously, Gavin? You're turning this into a thing?" She exhaled hard. "You've been emotionally checked out for months. Maybe if you paid attention once in a while, I wouldn't have to make stupid jokes." There it was, the first clean hit. I crossed my arms, kept my tone even. "Are you talking to him?" Something flickered in her expression, faint but undeniable. "And if I was," she snapped, "would you even notice? You haven't seen me in months. You barely look up when I walk into the room." I pushed off the doorframe, stepping toward her. "You're right. I didn't notice. Not until tonight." She set the bottle down with more force than needed. "You're being ridiculous. Elias is just a friend." I said nothing, just watched her. That silence made her flinch like I'd shouted. "We're just stuck, Gavin," she said, voice dropping. "Every couple goes through rough patches." "This isn't a patch," I said quietly. "This is you preparing your exit." She opened her mouth, searching for a reply, but nothing came. Instead, she turned away, pretending to straighten a pile of unopened mail, adjusting a vase that didn't need adjusting. I didn't add another word, just walked upstairs. The next morning, I woke alone. Her side of the bed was already cool. That was all the confirmation I needed. We weren't lost in a temporary slump. We were broken. The days that followed were a quiet parade of avoidance. Minimal words, only logistics, bills, groceries. We acted like things were fine, but the silence was a dead giveaway. On Thursday, I came home earlier than usual. Claire was upstairs, probably getting ready to head out again. Her phone sat beside her purse on the kitchen counter, same place she always left it. I wish I'd left it alone. But curiosity won. I hate that it did. In the stillness of the house, I picked it up. The screen lit up with a single preview from Elias. "Had a great time today. Miss you already." That was all it took. I didn't need to read the rest. That one line told me everything I'd refused to see. A few moments later, Claire emerged from the upstairs hallway, her fingers adjusting one of her earrings. She paused abruptly when her eyes landed on me at the dining table, her phone lying face up in front of me. The lightness in her face disappeared instantly. Her voice was tight. "What are you doing?" I met her gaze. "Waiting." "For what exactly?" I nudged her phone across the table toward her. "For the truth." Her eyes flicked to the phone, then back to me. Her arms folded defensively across her chest. "You're making this a bigger deal than it is." I raised an eyebrow. "Am I?" She shifted her weight, as if grounding herself. "I'm allowed to have friendships." "Friendships that end with, 'I miss you already?'" I asked. There was a pause. Then she exhaled and muttered, "All right. We had lunch." I stayed still. "With Elias." "Yes, Gavin. With Elias. Because he actually listens when I speak. Because he sees me." I leaned back, my pulse hammering in my ears, though I kept my face blank. "Then go where you feel seen," I said evenly. Her tone hardened. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means you've already chosen. I just needed to see it clearly." Her face faltered, like I'd struck a nerve. "You're ready to throw our marriage away over some texts?" Her voice cracked at the edges. I kept my voice quiet. "No, that happened the moment you did." For a second, I thought tears might form, but Claire never let herself look weak. Instead, she drew herself up, her jaw tight. "Maybe I should leave then." I gave a single nod. "Maybe that's best." In one swift motion, she grabbed her phone, purse, and keys. No apologies, no hesitation, only fury. Sharp, precise. The front door slammed with enough force to rattle the walls. I sat in the silence she left behind, the weight of it settling over me like a slow-moving mist. And in that stillness, a strange realization crept in. I didn't miss her. She didn't come home that night. And though I wish I could say I lay awake, tormented by second thoughts, the truth was far simpler. I slept better than I had in months. The next morning, the sky hung low, gray and cold. But something inside had shifted, something small but undeniable. A burden I hadn't even known I was carrying had been lifted. I made a cup of coffee, toasted a bagel, and sat at the kitchen table, her contact info staring back at me from my phone screen. I didn't call. Instead, I stood up, walked into the garage, and returned with a stack of empty boxes. I began collecting her belongings, clothes, heels, makeup collecting dust. One by one, I packed it all, without stopping to think or feel. Midway through, I heard the crunch of her tires in the driveway. She walked in like nothing had changed. "What the hell is this?" I stood, wiping my hands on my jeans. "Exactly what you asked for." "You can't just toss my stuff into boxes," she snapped. "You left," I said calmly. "I'm just following through." She glanced at the open boxes, her expression flickering with disbelief. "This is insane, Gavin." I shook my head. "No, it's finally making sense." Her mouth opened to argue, but the words never came. For a moment she looked at me, really looked, and something in her face shifted, just a crack in the armor. "Gavin, we can still fix this." I looked at her, steady and certain. "You don't fix what you abandon." For the first time, I saw real fear in her expression. She began backing away slowly. Then she turned, slammed the door behind her, and sped off. I remained standing, surrounded by half-packed boxes, feeling lighter than I had in years. That's when it hit me. Every time I picked up her calls, every time I gave in to guilt, I handed her power over me again. And I was done doing that. Weeks passed. One evening, I pulled into the driveway after a late shift and saw her sitting on the front steps. Her mascara was smudged, and her hair looked like it hadn't seen a brush in hours. She jumped to her feet as I approached. "Gavin, please don't do this." I walked past her and unlocked the door. "You shouldn't be here." She followed me in. "We're not over. You're just hurt. I get that. But we can rebuild." I dropped my keys on the counter without looking at her. "You're right. I was hurt. But now? I'm just tired." Her voice grew sharper. "So, you're walking away over one mistake?" I turned to face her fully. It wasn't just one. It was the comments when you thought I couldn't hear, the texts you sent behind my back, the constant erosion of who I was, and you didn't even notice. She opened her mouth to reply but said nothing. I reached for the folder on the counter and held it out to her. Her hands trembled. "What's this?" "Divorce papers." She took them slowly, her voice barely audible. This isn't you." I held her gaze. "No. And this thing between us? This isn't you either. Not anymore." She stood frozen, staring down at the folder in her hands, and in that moment, I knew it was over, and I was finally okay with that. She set them on the table with a quiet precision, her movements controlled, almost ceremonial. When her eyes met mine, they were devoid of any softness. "You're choosing wrong," she said, her voice cold and steady. "Maybe I am," I replied, "but it's still my choice." She didn't bother with a response, just reached for her bag, slung it over one shoulder, and walked out the door. This time, I didn't watch her go. I just closed the door behind her and turned the lock, not to keep her out, but to stop myself from running after her. The room felt different once she was gone, not empty, just changed. There was a strange clarity in the silence, as if I could finally inhale without restriction. Time passed. Days slipped by. I settled into the quiet quicker than I expected. One evening, I sat on the back porch with a beer in hand, watching the sky bleed with the colors of dusk. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. Claire. Again. "I miss you. Please, Gavin." I stared at the screen for a moment longer than I should have, then powered the phone down and set it face down. There was no anger left, no heartbreak, no lingering pain. Only closure. Weeks blurred into a month. The divorce papers showed up. I signed without hesitation. Even Mira reached out once. She offered some half-hearted excuse on Claire's behalf. I ignored that too. What caught me off guard wasn't the absence of what I'd lost. It was how little of it I actually missed. I picked up running again, signed up for a woodworking class, took a solo trip into the mountains, something Claire would have scoffed at, calling it a waste of time or a midlife crisis. But it wasn't that. It was the first time in years I felt unburdened. Sure, there were moments when my thoughts drifted back. Her laugh when she thought no one was listening. The way she used to lean against me like gravity had made the decision for her. But then, I'd remember that final look she gave me, so distant, so deliberate, and the choice she made while pretending it didn't matter. Some fractures run too deep to repair. Some paths, once taken, don't loop back. 6 months on, I was sitting in a new cafe downtown when I saw her. Claire. She looked worn down, thinner somehow, like life had been unkind and she hadn't dodged much of it. She didn't notice me, too caught up in a loud phone call, her hand slicing the air as she paced outside. I watched from behind the glass, sipping my coffee, and I felt nothing. No resentment, no longing, just space between us. I left quietly through the side exit, without her ever knowing I'd been there. That evening, Mira messaged again. Still trying, I guess. She said Claire was with Elias now, that things weren't going well, and that she looked miserable. I read the message, then deleted it. I wasn't interested in updates. I didn't need to see her fall apart. I simply didn't care anymore. I'd walked away from that story for good. That night, back in my house, finally my space, filled with things that reflected who I was, wrapped in a silence that felt peaceful instead of lonely. I found myself thinking of that night at Mira's party. The joke. That one moment when everything you thought was solid just cracked. And how sometimes that's the best thing that can happen. Because here's the truth. Claire didn't destroy me. She woke me up to what I'd been refusing to admit. I used to believe that love meant staying no matter what, swallowing pain, smoothing over cuts with smiles, pretending none of it left a mark. But I've grown since then. Love isn't about endurance. It's a direction you move in, not a storm you survive. Before turning in, I checked my phone one last time. Nothing waiting, no messages, no missed calls. Exactly right. I turned off the light, lay down, and smiled to myself. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting on anyone else. Everything I needed was already with me. And if Claire ever wondered what it was that finally made me leave, what broke the spell, she'd never really understand, because it wasn't some huge betrayal that drove me away. It was every tiny cut she assumed I'd learn to live with, until one day, I couldn't. And by then, I was already gone. Far beyond her reach, not hers to hurt anymore. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you? Her eyes had started to shine differently, not with the joy of shared moments or closeness, but with something distant, something he could no longer reach. At first, it seemed random, staying a little late at work, laughing quietly at her phone, leaving his questions unanswered. He didn't think much of it. She was tired, overwhelmed, maybe just trying to unwind. But day by day she was slipping away, as if rehearsing a life where he no longer had a place. And then she said it. The reunion. 10 years. And something in her voice, in the sparkle of her eyes, in the way she said the name Darren. It spoke louder than any confession ever could. He watched her get ready. The dress, the makeup, the hair, the walk that now carried purpose. But not for him, not for them, for something that had long lived inside her, something that never included him. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watch this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. I noticed the change in Sabrina well before she ever mentioned the reunion. It started subtly, so minor at first it barely registered. Her evenings began stretching longer, and when she finally made it home, her eyes barely left her phone. She'd sit there beside me, laughing quietly at messages I couldn't see, her fingers tapping away while I faded into the background. I chalked it up to stress, maybe a group chat helping her decompress after a demanding stretch at work. We all need a bit of distraction sometimes. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. So I didn't push. I let it be. Then, one evening, while stirring something on the stove, she casually brought it up. "Can you believe it's been 10 years, Daniel?" she said. "The college reunion's coming up. Everyone's gonna be there." She made it sound like an exciting escape. I nodded, said it might be fun to see familiar faces again. She smiled at that, but it didn't feel like it was meant for me. Her mind had already drifted somewhere far beyond our kitchen. From then on, the reunion became her new obsession. She bought new clothes, experimented with hairstyles, and spent weekends preparing with a kind of energy she hadn't shown since before our last anniversary. One night over dinner, I watched her across the table, that same glow in her eyes, and asked, "You're really going all out for this thing, huh?" She laughed lightly. "I just want to look good. It's been ages since I've seen any of them." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "You want me to come with you?" I offered. Her fork froze for a second before she answered, "It's mostly just people from school. You'd probably be bored." Bored. Like my being there would weigh her down. I tried to brush it off, but something about the way she said it stung deeper than I expected. Maybe it was nerves, or just the idea of rekindling old friendships. But deep inside, something knotted up. I couldn't name it at the time, not exactly. But she wasn't just reminiscing. She was preparing for something more, and I was too blind to understand what that meant. The night of the reunion, she descended the stairs looking like a stranger stepping into a different world. Her dress, a sleek, midnight blue number I'd never seen before, clung to her like it had been tailored just for this moment. Her heels were tall enough that she moved carefully, and her makeup was flawless in a way that felt almost deliberate. She looked incredible. I let out a soft whistle and told her so. She didn't even glance my way. "Thanks," she replied, adjusting her earrings, her gaze fixed on the mirror. I tried again. "Still sure you don't want me to come with you?" Her pause was brief but telling. "Just old friends," she said, clutching her purse. "You'd be out of place." I nodded, but inside, something gave way. This wasn't about nostalgia. This wasn't nerves. This was intentional, meant to keep me out. When the door closed behind her, I waited a few minutes. Then I grabbed my keys and followed. She drove across town to a familiar bar. I parked far enough away to stay unseen and watched from a distance. Sabrina arrived first. She stood at the entrance scanning the crowd until she saw him. Her entire demeanor shifted, like someone flipped a switch. His name was Darren. They'd gone to school together. I remembered him vaguely, a name mentioned in passing, never with detail. They embraced for longer than friends typically do. That hug wasn't awkward or formal, it was second nature. Inside, they sat shoulder to shoulder at the bar, laughing, leaning in, disappearing into their own world. She brushed his arm when she talked, twirled her hair, expressions and gestures I hadn't seen from her in months. After about an hour, they stepped outside together. I trailed them from a distance, ducking behind parked cars. Under the dim light of a flickering street lamp, Darren pulled her close and kissed her. Not a shy, hesitant kiss, a slow, confident one. The kind that only familiarity breeds, the kind that comes after repetition, after history. I lifted my phone and took a few quiet photos. Just enough. They pulled apart, smiling like no one else existed. Then they climbed into his car and disappeared down the road. I watched their taillights fade into the dark like the last glimmer of a life I no longer recognized. I didn't feel fury. I didn't feel disbelief. What settled in me was colder, heavier. This wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't a mistake. The way she moved with him, the ease between them, it all pointed to something well established. Every late night, every distracted smile, every vague excuse, it all belonged to this. I drove home in silence. No music. No thoughts beyond the quiet repetition of that kiss playing over in my mind. It was almost laughable. Weeks of second-guessing myself, wondering if I was imagining it all. And in just 1 hour, it became undeniable. When I pulled into the driveway, I felt no panic, no surge of emotion. I wasn't angry. I wasn't heartbroken. I was simply done. The house looked unchanged. Porch light on, her coat still hanging by the door, but everything felt hollow, like walking into a hotel room just after the guest has checked out. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my phone. The pictures were clear, undeniable. Her smile when she saw him, the way she leaned into him like she belonged there. The look in her eyes, like she wasn't betraying me, but had already left. As if I was the one clinging to a chapter she'd quietly closed. Some betrayals come with confusion. Some leave room for excuses. This wasn't one of them. A brief embrace now and then, the occasional text, but never that final boundary. I never had to confront her. There was no need for raised voices or dramatic scenes. Sabrina had already made her decision. She just hadn't spoken it aloud yet. At first light, she stumbled through the front door, barefoot, mascara smudged, hair tangled in a way that told the whole story. She hadn't been home, not all night. I stood silently at the top of the staircase, watching her float through the entryway like a stranger. She didn't even glance in my direction. Her keys dropped onto the kitchen counter with a soft clink, her shoes hit the floor next, and she collapsed onto the couch like it was just another morning. I observed for a moment longer before turning away and heading back to bed. There was no heartbreak in seeing her that way, just a sharp, undeniable truth. Detached, spent, unbothered. Our marriage hadn't been unraveling, it had already unraveled. All that remained was for me to quietly exit the final pages she had started writing without me. But I didn't walk out that morning. That would have been too kind. I needed her to feel it, to notice the emptiness creeping in, little by little. So I waited. And while I waited, I made quiet moves in the background. I secured a small apartment clear across town. It wasn't extravagant. Just a simple place, fully furnished, blank walls, no past attached. I opened a separate bank account and began shifting my paychecks there in steady, careful increments. No dramatics, no sudden moves, nothing to alert her. Sabrina continued wading through her fantasy. Late nights, secretive smiles, endless stories about clients and girls' nights that no longer held up under scrutiny. She suspected nothing. I waited until she was comfortable, sipping wine across the table, scrolling through her phone as we ate. "I thought I saw Darren the other day," I said casually, forking a piece of chicken. She stiffened, only for a heartbeat, but I saw it. "Darren?" she echoed, stalling. "Wow, I haven't seen him in ages." I wiped my mouth with a napkin, keeping my tone neutral. "Didn't he show up at the reunion?" Her head shook a bit too quickly. No, he didn't go." I gave her a faint smile. Of course he didn't. Not officially, anyway. Not unless we count the night you vanished into the dark with him behind a parked car. I let it slide. No accusations, no probing. Just shifted the conversation and let her slide back into her lie. That weekend, while she pretended to be out shopping, I packed up the rest of what I needed. Some clothes, my important documents, a few old photographs I still wasn't ready to throw away. Everything else, I left it behind. The house hadn't felt like home in a long time. It was just a structure now. Before I stepped out for the last time, I took off my wedding band and placed it next to her half-finished glass of wine on the counter. That said enough. When Sabrina came back, she'd find the closet half empty, my keys still on their hook by the door, and the ring sitting there. Quiet, deliberate. No argument, no tears, just absence. And if there was still any honesty left in her, even a sliver, she'd understand what that silence meant. That evening, she walked through the door like it was any other night. From the shadows of my car parked down the block, I watched her approach, heels dangling from one hand, purse slung lazily over her shoulder, eyes glowing at her phone like the world hadn't changed. She stepped inside. The door shut behind her. 30 seconds passed. Then the porch light flickered on. She rushed outside again, glancing wildly into the yard like she half expected me to be waiting, ready to forgive, ready to forget. But I wasn't. Not tonight. Not ever. Her calls came in waves. My personal phone rang first, then my work line. When neither got a reply, she started calling my brother, Caleb. I let them all go unanswered. I wanted her to pace that house, the one she once filled with warmth, and feel it echo back cold, hollow, abandoned. Later that night, Caleb called. "You want me to handle this?" he asked, hearing the knocks pounding at his front door. "I've got it," I replied. When I pulled up, she was under the porch light, arms wrapped tightly around herself, like she might shatter if she let go. Her face was streaked with tears and the remnants of makeup, and there was a vacant look in her eyes, the kind that comes from nights without sleep. "Daniel," she said, her voice raw, frayed. "Please, just talk to me." I didn't move. I looked at her evenly. "You lied," I said, calm but firm, over and over again. She shook her head desperately. "It was a mistake," she gasped. It didn't mean anything. A bitter laugh slipped out, not because I found it funny, but because I couldn't believe how easily she said it. You kissed him like you were 17, I said. You got into his car. You disappeared until morning. That's not a mistake, Sabrina. That's a choice. She broke then, sobbing openly, no longer trying to hold it back. I love you, she whispered. I stared at her. No. You loved the version of me who still trusted you. She reached for me, clutching at my coat like she could drag us back to before. I stepped away. You already lost, I said quietly. You just didn't realize it until tonight. Then I turned away, climbed back into my car, and drove off, leaving her there, in the cold, exactly where she chose to be. My new apartment was waiting. Second floor, peaceful, a view of the skyline, and not a single ghost. By the time the sun rose the next day, the divorce papers had already been delivered. I didn't wait around to witness her reaction. I didn't need to. Sabrina tried everything. She called, she sent texts, she even showed up unannounced at Caleb's place once more. I offered her nothing in return, just silence. The terms were straightforward. No drawn-out arguments about belongings, no tug of war over money. I didn't fight for the house. I didn't want the furniture. She could have all of it. What I truly needed was space, wide and clear. What I was really chasing was release. 2 weeks later, Mitchell called, one of the few mutual friends who stayed neutral through the fallout. Did you hear about Sabrina? He asked. No, I said, my voice steady, unreadable. He hesitated before continuing. She's not doing well. Stopped going to work. Hardly leaves the house. I've heard she barely gets out of bed anymore. I didn't respond. What was there to say? She'd lit the fuse herself. I just chose not to stop the detonation. 3 days later, the final divorce decree arrived in my mailbox. No note tucked inside, no farewell words, just her signature at the bottom, shaky and uncertain, like her hand wasn't sure how to end the story she started. That was the close of it. Unmistakable. Permanent. A few friends kept checking in, asking if I was holding up. Caleb checked more than most, always half expecting me to break. But there was no breakdown coming. No tears, no anger. The truth was far simpler. I wasn't mourning anything. I felt more unburdened than I had in years. Sabrina, on the other hand, she was stuck. She remained in that sprawling house, wandering through rooms with empty hangers and wine stains on the rug. Mitchell told me she dipped her toes into dating again, but nothing stuck. Maybe every face she saw reminded her of what she'd destroyed, and the man she'd gambled it all for. Some fires burn too hot to ever rebuild what they consume. I think eventually she realized that, but by then I was already too far gone to hear her crying from the wreckage. Starting fresh was easier than I had imagined. The apartment was small, creaky floors, a cramped kitchen where only one person could stand comfortably, but it was entirely mine. No shared closets, no framed memories on the shelves, no silent tension hanging in the air. Just peace. I took a new job downtown, low profile, quieter, removed from the pressure of corporate ambition. I started running again, joined a gym. My days began to fill with things that made me feel alive, not performative, not desperate for validation. The past loosened its grip on me quicker than I anticipated. Occasionally, Mitchell or Caleb would mention Sabrina in passing. She's still in that house, Mitchell said one evening over drinks. Folks say she looks worn down, like life caught up to her faster than she expected. I only nodded. Sabrina had clung to the past like it was a lifeline. She chased after what was gone until it became a prison. I never asked for updates. I didn't want revenge. She was already steeped in the consequences, waking up daily in a home built for two, with no one but her regrets for company. Sometimes I'd sit on my balcony with a beer in hand, gazing at the city lights blinking like quiet reassurances, thinking about the man I used to be. The one who waited up late, hoping she'd walk through the door. The one who believed that love, if poured out fully, would always be enough. I didn't hold resentment toward him. He was simply young, hopeful. Sometimes you have to lose the wrong person to learn what you're really worth. Sabrina's greatest failure wasn't that night with Darren in that dim parking lot. It wasn't the lies, or the sneaking around, or even the moment she chose to walk away from everything we built. Her real mistake was thinking I'd still be there when she finally turned back around. But I wasn't. I had already gone. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I wasn't hoping she'd catch up. I was just living. Light. Done. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. All right, I said, trying to keep calm and control my voice. Sophie, however, didn't hide the growing irritation in her tone. All right? Did you even hear what I just said? Yes, dear. You're meeting another man on Friday and you think that's normal? Her surprise was obvious. Not exactly. But what can I do? As you yourself said, I don't make decisions for you. You're free to choose what you want. Everything in your behavior and words shows that you've already made up your mind. What choice do I have? I sighed, resigning myself. I'll still be here. Don't let your fragile male ego ruin everything. I love you and I'll fix it. You'll see. So you do understand that this is wrong. My voice remained even, though I was far from calm inside. What are you talking about? I didn't say that. Really? Do you think your parents or mine would approve of this? Sophie lowered her eyes, avoiding my gaze, but said nothing. That was all I needed to hear. I allowed the silence to stretch between us, giving her time to think. She didn't show it, but I knew the weight of the situation was gradually sinking in. You know they wouldn't approve. You know what you're doing is wrong. You've practically admitted it. When? How? Then why do you feel the need to make it up to me? If it were just dinner with friends, there would be no need to apologize. Or if it were something harmless like going to the hairdresser, the only reason you want to make it up is because deep down, you know you're doing something wrong and it's eating at you. Her voice trembled, doubt beginning to creep in. But you said it was fine. No, I didn't. I said I couldn't stop you, but that's not the same as agreeing to it. I'd rather you stayed with me, or better yet, we could go together. Same restaurant, same club afterward. But it's not about dinner or dancing, is it? You want to spend time with someone else, and that someone isn't me. You want him? What's his name again? Am I right? She glanced at me quickly, but said nothing. What's his name? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. I'm not trying to argue, but let me be clear. I don't want you spending time with this guy, Wilson, or whatever his name is, and meeting him on Friday. That'll have consequences. What consequences? Just like you keep Mr. Wilson a secret, I'm keeping this to myself. You're not just beautiful, you're smart too. I always tell you that. Maybe you think I'm saying it because I have to. I don't just say things. Every word I speak has weight. Now it's up to you, smart woman, to figure out what might happen if you decide to spend Friday evening with Mr. Wilson and not with me. You think I'm bluffing, don't you? You think I'll cave because you know I love you. You always manage to twist things to your advantage, but right now, I want us to be one again, to love each other and grow old together. I can't control your bad decisions, but consider yourself warned. From this moment, you're on your own. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and left before she could say anything else. The apartment had been tense all week, so cold that you could practically see your breath. By Thursday evening, I'd reached my limit. I packed my things and moved into the guest room. "What are you doing, Liam?" she asked, crossing her arms, watching as I carried a stack of clothes. I looked at her with genuine confusion, like a child trying to solve a puzzle. "Are you serious? I clearly overestimated you," I replied. "What do you think I'm doing? I'm moving out. You're just going to leave? Just like that? She asked, disbelief in her voice. Yes, I said flatly. My wife wants to date other men. Did you think I'd stay and keep sharing the same bed with you? Don't even hope for that. Her voice turned mocking, almost childish, like we were on a playground. Oh, what a baby you are. I didn't even respond. I moved my things into the guest room and started hanging clothes in the empty closet. When I went back for the rest of my stuff, she spoke again. So what now? Are you going to ignore me? Is this your way of punishing me? I simply said, these are the consequences. She couldn't say she hadn't been warned. Friday came, and I made a decision. I left work early and decided to treat myself. First, I went to an upscale salon for a stylish haircut, a clean shave, and a neat manicure. Nothing excessive, just clean and sharp. Then, I popped into the nearby men's store and picked out a fresh shirt, tailored pants, and a sleek jacket. I considered buying new shoes but thought better of it. New shoes for the evening could only spell trouble. Instead, I stopped by the car wash and had my truck cleaned inside and out. Even the truck didn't recognize itself afterward. When I got home, I took a long, hot shower. Sophie came back shortly after and jumped into the shower too. I went downstairs and waited. Half an hour later, she came down the stairs in a dress I'd never seen before. Short, barely reaching her knees, with a neckline that left almost nothing to the imagination. She stopped at the bottom step, clearly expecting a compliment. I said nothing. Her eyes widened in confusion as she looked at me again. "Oh my God!" she gasped. "You look incredible. Where are you going?" I kept my voice calm. "Out. Where else?" Mimicking her former haughty tone, I added, "What did you think? Did you honestly think your pathetic husband would just sit idly by, doing nothing, while you, the self-proclaimed queen, finally decide to show up after your nights out?" I slowly shook my head in disbelief, throwing open the garage door. The disappointment in my voice was undeniable as I spoke. "I really thought you were smart. Turns out I was wrong. How could I be so mistaken, right? Well, I've got more important things to do. Amelia doesn't put up with this kind of nonsense." I jumped into my pristine truck, and just as I started the engine, I heard a distant shout. I couldn't help but smirk. An evening with Amelia? Magnificent. We met at a small, cozy wine bar that served light dinners, with a pianist filling the space with soothing music on the weekends, making couples sway gently on the tiny dance floor. Our conversations at work already showed how naturally we connected. And the best part? She got my humor. I know it sounds cliché, but it's true. Nothing wins over a man faster than a woman who genuinely laughs at his jokes. Dancing with her felt like floating to a sensual melody, all wrapped up in her elegant heels. We were in perfect sync, our lips brushing each other's cheeks, ears, and eventually meeting in a kiss. There was this magnetic pull between us, our bodies moving as if they were meant for this. But we both knew the reality. I was still married, and we accepted the boundaries that came with that. So we let the evening stretch on, sipping wine, exchanging playful glances, as if time itself had stopped. Sophie, as I've said before, was undeniably beautiful and full of fiery passion, but that passion had a dark side, jealousy. I was almost certain that the mere thought of me being near Amelia would drive Sophie into a rage, shattering whatever thrill she was feeling with her latest fling, the infamous Mr. Wilson. When I dropped Amelia off at her house, she playfully dabbed some perfume on my shirt and left lipstick marks on my collar, neck, and cheek. With a mischievous smile, she kissed me goodbye. "Go show them, Tiger," she teased, and we both laughed as I got back into my truck, heading home. It wasn't even 11 o'clock when I walked into what felt like the North Pole. "Where have you been?" Sophie spat, her voice icy. Without hesitation, I replied, "It's none of your business." I looked her straight in the eyes, completely indifferent. "You never bothered to tell me where you run off to with Mr. Wilson. I could ask if you used protection, but honestly, I don't care if you're rotting from the inside out. I'm never touching your disgusting, cheating body again. So, no, I don't care where you've been. I had a fantastic evening, and frankly, I should thank you for that." Her confusion was almost amusing. "What do you mean by thank you?" she mumbled. I shrugged. "Don't you get it? If it weren't for your brilliant idea to open up our marriage, I would have never had the chance to grow closer to Amelia. And trust me, she's something else. Beautiful, incredible, absolutely stunning. So thank you, darling. Truly." That's when Sophie snapped. She screamed so loudly that for a moment I wondered if the neighbors would call the police. "You know I hate her. Why would you even think of her out of all people?" She was seething with rage. I just smiled. "Exactly. Seems I gave you too much credit again. Can you focus for a minute? This isn't rocket science. You decided to cut me off, flaunting yourself in front of some random guy, wearing outfits you never even considered for me, and now you're surprised I reacted accordingly? You changed the dynamic of our relationship without even discussing it with me, so I played along. The only real difference between us is that I was honest about who I was seeing. But for some reason, you're too ashamed to even admit who your little companions are. You destroyed our marriage, our 30-year marriage. So my genius, what exactly is your complaint?" The confidence drained from her face and Sophie began to crumble, tears streaming down her cheeks. Before she could regain her composure, I continued. "Let me guess. William didn't manage to land his prize tonight, did he?" She gasped quietly, quickly covering her mouth with her hands. "How did you know?" In my best game show host voice, I replied, "You're showing a serious lack of awareness again. Try to think for once. You work in an office full of women, and William's the biggest flirt. People talk, and everyone knows who's sleeping with who. That's exactly what happened. So did you really think you were any different? For over a month now, some of your so-called friends have been feeding me details about your little affair with William. Turns out you weren't just charmed by him. You were actively pursuing him. One of your colleagues even mentioned that you literally light up when he walks into the room. Maybe he ditched someone for you. No jealousy here, just facts. Word is, tonight was supposed to be your big night. He even booked a room at the Hilton, everything set for the occasion. Your first night of luxury, and then either a cheap hotel or back to someone else. You didn't know?" Her wide, shocked eyes told me everything I needed to know. She couldn't believe how naive, trusting, and careless she had been. She finally broke down, sobbing. "Oh, Liam, I'm so sorry. You're right. I'm such a fool. How can you stand being with someone as stupid as me?" "Sophie, here's the thing. I don't have to. I don't have to stay married to you or put up with your pathetic, unfaithful behavior. Tomorrow morning after breakfast, you'll be served the divorce papers. We're renting this house and there are 3 months left on the lease. You can either extend it or use that time to figure out where you're going next." "Where will you go?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Amelia invited me to stay with her while I sorted out my affairs. She had a spare room, which she used as an office. She mentioned that once I settled all the paperwork, we could consider a more permanent living arrangement. When I said I'd take care of it the next day, she offered some very enticing conditions. I couldn't wait to explore them in more detail. As for the other issues between us, we'll split everything evenly. Now you're free to see whomever you want without bothering yourself with the drama of a weak-willed husband. I hope William was worth it." To sum it up, I met a few other husbands who had also been deceived by William, who earned the nickname Mr. Wilson. One evening, after dinner, William discovered that his car had been destroyed. The windows were smashed, the body scratched, and baby diapers smeared on the seats, with the wheels stolen. As he stood there in shock, 3 masked men appeared, beat him up, and robbed him. Oddly enough, the police never quite figured out why these guys wanted his wallet and fake Rolex, especially after they had already trashed his car. There were no witnesses, and the security cameras in the parking lot were mysteriously covered in paint, so the investigation stalled. Meanwhile, 4 spouses of William's former victims had a poker night at someone's house. When William recovered, he packed his things and left town. No one knows where he went, and honestly, no one cares. Sophie left as well. She found a new place, but when she realized I was happy with Amelia, she vanished too. I never saw Sophie again. Amelia and I stayed together for a while, but we soon realized that what works in the short term doesn't always bring long-term satisfaction. Eventually, I moved into my own townhouse, closer to work. With age, wisdom, and improved physical fitness, I met a colleague at the gym. One thing led to another, and finally, I found happiness with someone who combined both intelligence and loyalty. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. The conference had just ended, and the participants were outside celebrating with drinks and laughter. I didn't want to witness the typical post-conference revelry, so I quietly slipped away, hoping to find a calm place to eat alone. After wandering a bit, I ended up in a nearly empty bar, sat down at a table, and waited for my food. At that moment, a woman entered, about my age, with blonde hair and wearing a well-tailored business suit, and sat down next to me. She waved to the bartender, ordering a drink with obvious urgency. "Something strong, double," she said. She quickly drained her first glass and immediately ordered a second. Socializing isn't my strong suit, which my wife always teases me about, calling me one of the most reclusive people she knows. However, for some reason I felt compelled to say something. "Rough day?" I asked. She looked at me with her blue eyes, which glistened with unshed tears. Without responding, she silently finished her second drink, got up, and headed for the exit. But instead of leaving, she collapsed into a chair by the door, her shoulders beginning to shake with sobs. Not knowing what to do, I hesitated, then approached and gently placed my hand on her shoulder. "Sorry if I'm intruding. Do you need help? Maybe I can call someone or a cab?" Her tear-streaked face lifted to me, her eyes swollen with grief, her expression reminding me of a lost child. In that brief moment, it felt like my heart stopped. All I wanted was to comfort her, to assure her that everything would be okay. On the table nearby was a box of tissues and a bottle of hand sanitizer. I took a tissue and gently wiped her tears until her sobs gradually subsided. For a moment, gratitude flashed in her eyes. When her tears finally ceased, she looked me in the eye and quietly said, "Thank you. You didn't have to do that." She gave a weak smile. "Funny how it all started with your awkward attempt at conversation," she added, still smiling faintly. Before I could respond, she leaned in to kiss me. I instinctively turned my head, so her lips touched my cheek. I gently placed my hands on her shoulders and kissed her forehead. But she didn't stop. She came closer again, this time aiming for my lips. I hesitated. "Are you sure this is what you want?" I asked with doubt. Before I could rethink it, her lips touched mine, and any resistance quickly faded. My hotel was just a few minutes' walk away, and we went there together. However, throughout it all, a sense of unease lingered. This wasn't like me, and I wasn't sure I even wanted it. When we entered the room, she asked, "Mind if I use your bathroom?" I nervously sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the sound of water running in the shower that filled the room. My stomach churned, and time seemed to slow down. When the water finally stopped, a wave of dread washed over me. She emerged from the bathroom completely naked, her blonde hair cascading down her shoulders as she approached me. She reached for a kiss again, but all I could think was, "I need to take a shower." Under the cold water, my mind raced frantically. The whole situation felt surreal, as if I had been ripped from reality. After what felt like an eternity, I emerged, put on a robe, and sat back on the edge of the bed. Nothing made sense. After a long pause, I finally reached out to her. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I didn't want you to misunderstand. I can't do this. I'm really sorry." She looked at me with an impassive expression and simply said, "Good job." Without saying another word, she dressed and quietly left the room. The next morning, my wife Amanda met me at the airport, smiling warmly as I approached. "How was the conference?" she asked with lightness in her voice. "Something strange happened last night," I began, still feeling anxious. Amanda's smile grew wider and she said, as if she knew something, "I already know." Surprised, I asked, "What do you mean, you know?" "The woman you met last night is a close friend of mine. We made a small bet. We wanted to see if our husbands would remain faithful. She lost. I won. It took me a few moments to process her words. And then, the reality of the situation hit me like a wave. I could have lost everything I had built over 30 years, the marriage I cherished so much, but I passed the test. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. He opened the door and closed an entire life behind it. Not with raised voices, not with tears, but in an icy silence where every word weighed more than a scream. 8 years, reduced to the turn of a key. She left, confident she'd return. But in that time, he changed more than just the locks. He erased her presence from the home like a stain that had been tolerated too long. And then came the confession. Too late, and more terrifying than he ever imagined. Recorded in a trembling voice, with a plea in every word. But what's the point of repentance when it comes at a closed door? Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watch this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. My name is Gavin, and for the longest time, I genuinely thought I had found something rare. I wasn't oblivious. I chose to believe. I valued personal freedom and trusted in mutual respect. I never needed to install tracking apps or rifle through messages. In my mind, true love didn't need monitoring. It just existed, solid and unquestioned. Julia and I were together for 8 years, 5 of those as husband and wife. She was sharp, independent, always chasing the next big opportunity in her marketing career. People naturally gravitated toward her. She had this undeniable pull, a blend of charisma and certainty that filled every room. And she knew the effect she had. I never faulted her for that. Jealousy wasn't something I struggled with. To me, it always felt like admitting you were unsure of yourself. But over time, I started to sense a shift. Nothing overt or explosive, just a slow drift. Julia began to test boundaries. Work gatherings started to go later, sometimes stretching past midnight, even into the early hours. When I'd ask, she brushed it off. It just went long, or, you know how these things get. Her replies were smooth, detached, delivered with that effortless deflection that made me feel silly for even questioning her. And I let it pass. Over and over, until Monica showed up. She mentioned him casually one evening while we were cooking, said he was part of some product launch team. Just an old friend, she tossed out, slicing onions as if the conversation barely mattered. I asked what kind of friend. Without hesitation, she replied, my ex-husband. I stopped mid-motion, a spoon hovering over the sauce. Your ex-husband? I repeated. She laughed softly. Come on, Gavin. That was a lifetime ago. We're just friends now. He runs a creative agency and one of our clients brought him in. It's really nothing. Then she looked at me. You're not about to turn this into some drama, are you? I didn't. I should have. But I still believed that real love could handle a complicated backstory. I told myself Monica was just that, someone from a closed chapter. I prided myself on not being the man who feared ghosts from the past. That's where I miscalculated. Monica wasn't a shadow. He was very much in the picture. I was about to find out just how blind I'd been. About 3 months after she reconnected with him, his name started surfacing more regularly. Monica's team is taking over the branding, she said over coffee. Monica asked for my thoughts on the new concept, she mumbled while checking her phone. Monica said the funniest thing today. You get the idea. At first, I played it cool. I'd nod, sip my drink, mutter something vague like, sounds interesting. But her tone when she said his name, it changed, like she was watching me, like she was measuring my reaction. One night while we were curled up watching a series, she burst out laughing at something on her phone. I leaned in. Who's that? I asked. She angled the screen away. Just Monica. He's being ridiculous. I paused the episode. You two talk after hours now? She gave me that half-smirk, half-innocent look. It's nothing, Gavin. We're just talking. Don't make it weird. I didn't push. I wanted to. But I held back. Later that night, after she'd gone to bed, I stayed up, sitting at the kitchen table. I wasn't angry. Not yet. But something had definitely shifted. A quiet line was being drawn. Then came the moment everything tipped. About a week later, we were finishing the dishes when she dropped it like she was mentioning a staff meeting. Monica's hosting a few of us at his lake house next weekend. Just a small getaway for the team. Some drinks, maybe a little downtime. Nothing crazy, she added. I turned off the tap and grabbed a towel. You're actually going? I asked. She shrugged. Yeah. It's kind of a work/unwind thing. I've been running nonstop for months. Don't I deserve a break? I looked her in the eye. You're seriously going to spend the weekend at your ex-husband's place? She didn't blink. It's not like it's just the two of us. It's a group. Totally professional. My voice tightened. You could have passed. You didn't have to say yes. She sighed, already exasperated. Why would I turn it down? We're adults, Gavin. Nothing's going to happen. Monica and I are just friends. I let out a slow breath. You keep saying that, but everything about the way you talk about him suggests otherwise. You light up when he messages. You bring him up constantly. You don't even notice how different you are around him. She paused, dish still in hand. You're overthinking this. I haven't done anything wrong. Not yet, I said quietly. But you're pushing. You're seeing how far you can take this before I finally say no more. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing. So, this is your line? You're drawing it now? I nodded, calm but firm. If you go, I said, drying my hands, don't come back. She turned fully to face me, still holding the plate. Are you actually serious right now? I kept my voice level. No trembling, no hesitation. She responded with that smug little grin she always used, the one that implied I was being melodramatic or insecure. Oh, Gavin, don't be so dramatic, she said with a dismissive flick of her hand. This isn't some teenage romance, she added, voice clipped. No, I said calmly, setting my plate gently on the kitchen counter. It's a marriage, and you're pushing it right to the edge. She studied me, eyes narrowing, as if trying to decode whether this was real or just another argument she could shrug off or charm her way through. But this wasn't one of those moments, and something in my tone, maybe the calmness, landed differently. For the first time, I could see it register. She didn't fully believe I'd go through with anything, but this time, something in her shifted, a sliver of doubt. The morning she was supposed to leave, she moved around the house like it was any other day. She hummed while folding her clothes, matched her outfits with care, lingered over her makeup like she was prepping for brunch with friends. She threw me the occasional glance, waiting for a reaction, for me to say something, stop her, argue. I didn't. I sat at the table, sipping my coffee and scrolling through my phone, calm and expressionless. Eventually, she leaned against the doorframe, trying to appear casual. You're really ending our marriage over one weekend? I didn't look up. If you walk out that door, this ends. She crossed her arms. This is insane, Gavin. It's just a couple of days. You're blowing it out of proportion. I stood, walked past her, and opened the front door. She blinked, thrown. Are you serious? That's it? That's it, I said. There was a beat of silence, then she rolled her suitcase to the door. She leaned in and pressed a soft kiss to my cheek, more out of habit than affection, like she thought I was overreacting and she was humoring me. You'll cool off, she said under her breath, stepping through the door. I watched her toss her luggage into the trunk of an Uber and get in without a glance back. The second the car disappeared around the corner, I grabbed my phone and called a locksmith. He showed up less than an hour later. While he worked on the locks, I started gathering her things. No anger, no theatrics, just quiet purpose. Her clothes, her shoes, makeup, the book she left on the nightstand, everything went into boxes. I left nothing behind that could pull her back. I arranged to have the boxes sent to her sister's place. She wouldn't go to her parents. They'd ask too many questions. But Maggie? Maggie would stay quiet. Just nod, keep her mouth shut, and let it all slide. The last call I made that afternoon was to my lawyer. "I'm ready to file," I told him. I wasn't seeking revenge. I didn't want a dramatic showdown. I didn't want her back either. All I wanted was quiet. And for the first time, I was ready to do what it took to have it. She came back sooner than expected. I thought I had until Sunday night. But Saturday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a security alert. Front door camera. I was in the middle of a meeting at work when I glanced down and saw her standing on the porch, suitcase in hand. I excused myself, stepped into the hallway, and pulled up the live feed. She tried the doorknob once, then again, a third time. Her face twisted from confusion to frustration. She looked around, like she didn't recognize the place anymore. Then she pulled out her phone. Moments later, mine lit up. "Gavin?" Her voice was tight. "The door's locked, I can't get in." "I changed the locks," I said evenly. A beat passed. "What?" "I told you. If you left, you wouldn't be coming back." She gave a hollow, disbelieving laugh. "You're kidding. This is absurd. Can we please talk?" "There's nothing left to talk about. Your stuff's at Maggie's. The divorce papers will be with you next week." "You're really doing this?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Yes." She went quiet. I could hear her breathing, shaky, uncertain. Then, barely audible. "Can I at least come in, please? We can talk. I didn't even stay the whole weekend. I came back early." "That was your choice," I said. "Just like this is mine." I hung up. She called again, and once more after that. I let every call ring through. Then the text came. "You're making a huge mistake. You're throwing away everything we've built. You're acting like a child." I didn't respond. Later, another alert. She was sitting on the steps, elbows on her knees, staring at her phone like it had all turned against her. She looked like someone who had finally realized the game was over, and she'd lost. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel satisfaction either. I just felt done. Eventually, she left. That night, I put my phone on silent. I didn't have the patience to witness her unraveling. Whatever version of the story she planned to spin, I was already ahead of her. Sometime past midnight, I saw a notification, a voice memo. I hovered for a second, then tapped play. Her voice came through raw and frayed, like she'd been crying for hours. "Gavin, please, just hear me out. I didn't know how else to say this. I messed everything up. You were right. About Monica. It wasn't innocent. He wasn't just being friendly. It wasn't just a group trip. Yeah, he invited others, but I was the reason. I get that now. I was foolish. Thought I had control over everything." Her voice trembled, strained with guilt. I could hear the uneven rhythm of her steps against the porch boards. She was pacing. "He waited until I'd had too much to drink," she said softly, barely audible. Everyone else had gone to bed. Somehow, it ended up just the two of us. I lingered. I shouldn't have. None of it was supposed to happen. There was a long pause. Then she confessed. "He recorded it," she said, her voice barely holding together. "I didn't even realize until the next morning. He showed me the footage, said he'd keep it to himself if I stayed quiet. He's blackmailing me." I stood motionless in the kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, listening to her unravel. "He won't answer my calls now. He knows it's done. I'm terrified, Gavin. I never wanted any of this." And then her voice cracked open completely. She broke down, sobbing between gasps. words colliding with panic. Please don't leave me. I need you. I made a mistake. I didn't know what I was doing. Her final words, please, come outside. The voicemail ended. I glanced at the front door, then through the window. She was there, pacing back and forth on the porch, clutching her phone like it was the only thing holding her upright. But I didn't open the door. I reached for my phone, pulled up our messages, and typed a single sentence. You made this choice. Now live with it. Then I blocked her. And I went to bed. Sunday passed in complete silence. Julia vanished from my messages, my inbox, my social feeds. I wiped every trace clean. By Monday, I returned to my usual routine. New shirt, coffee in hand, mind clear. Around noon, my attorney emailed me. Divorce papers finalized. I signed and returned them within the hour. Tuesday brought the ripple effect. Maggie, her sister, texted, "She's not okay. Maybe you should talk to her." I didn't respond. A few old mutual friends tried reaching out, offering tired lines like, "It was one mistake," or "Don't let a single night ruin everything." One even said, "If you ever loved her, you'd let her explain." I didn't read past the opening lines. I deleted them all. They hadn't seen the years I spent holding things together, cleaning up after her, shielding her from the consequences she refused to face. They didn't know the warnings I'd given, over and over. After Maggie asked her to leave, Julia moved back in with her parents. Her father, traditional and always wary of Monica, even during the marriage, was reportedly furious. She tried to downplay everything, claimed it was just a weekend getaway. Then her mother called me. Her voice was soft, steady. "I'm not calling to fix anything, Gavin. Just wanted you to know, we understand. You didn't deserve this. We're sorry." I told her thank you. That was the end of it. As for Monica, once he realized Julia might go to the police, once he saw she was talking, he vanished, deleted everything, quit his job, disappeared. She had risked everything for someone who bolted the moment things got real. I never looked back. I kept going. It's been nearly a year. Every now and then, someone, an old co-worker, a friend, asks, "Whatever happened between you and Julia?" I just say, "It didn't work out," and leave it at that. I don't need to revisit it. I lived every moment of it. No court battles, no bitter fights. She signed the papers quietly. Maybe she knew it was over before she ever came back to the porch. Maybe when she tried the door and found the locks changed, she finally understood. There was no dramatic confrontation, no teary apology that could fix it. She crossed a line, and I told her exactly what that meant. And then I held to it. I think that's what really broke her. Not the silence, not even the divorce, but the fact that I didn't flinch. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I simply walked away. She kept trying. New numbers, unmarked emails. Same message. I didn't mean for it to happen. You were right. Please let me explain. I never answered. I wasn't chasing closure. I didn't want her to suffer. I didn't need more details to understand. Because the moment she walked out of that house, fully aware of what I'd made clear, knowing exactly what she was doing, that was all the clarity I needed. Sometimes people ask, would you ever forgive her? Take her back? No. Not because I'm angry, but because I finally know my own worth. I gave her time. I gave her kindness. I gave her every opportunity to choose differently. And she gave all of that to Monica, a man who disappeared the second it got hard. I didn't lose my temper. I grew up, and that changed everything. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you